Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Echo Wirm Live. This is a bi-weekly live stream that we try to do every other Thursday around about that 4 o'clock Eastern hour in the United States. It gives everyone here in the Western Hemisphere time to catch up at the end of their school or work day. Maybe to the listeners in the UK and Europe, getting to catch people at the end of their evening, as well as just kind of the early morning crowd over in Australia. If you are in any of those countries or are comfortable sharing where in the world you are listening from, that's something that I take a lot of pride in and am very curious to see where in the world you guys are listening from. So feel free to drop that in the chat below or in the comments if you're listening to this afterwards. If you're here in the live chat or watching after the fact and have access to the comments, let me know that. Or if you want to ask some questions, feel free to drop those wherever you're able to as well. If we don't get to them by the end of this live stream, of course, we will drop them next time, which should be in about 2 weeks. If you're new here, we typically run these streams for about 2 hours or so, maybe a little less today, given some stuff going on personally for me. Live chat is open to pretty much anything you want to ask, whether it be in relation to me or the channel, or just stuff that we cover on the channels as well. We'll probably have some questions and people curious about the new Percy Jackson or Nico D'Angelo book, The Court of the Dead, the new Percy Jackson season coming up very, very soon here, the new Harry Potter TV show, which has started kind of leaking some photos from the filming process, as well as the upcoming season 1 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is a spin-off of Game of Thrones, excuse me. So any of those things, if you want to ask, feel free to ask in the chat and we'll cover that sort of thing there. All of that is supplemented by some pre-prepared questions that you guys have left on the channel or over on Patreon or Discord. You're more than welcome to join the Patreon or Discord if that's something you're interested in. It is free to join. Of course, over on Patreon, you do get more content if you become a paying member, but those links are available in our channel bio or just go to patreon.com/EchoWorm. My rule for spoilers is that if anything is out on the channel for free, then it is available to be discussed in the chat. So if that's something that you think affects you, then feel free to maybe skip this one and come back to it at a later date. Before we start, I do want to give a major shout out to our channel members and patrons. Those are my top tier patrons there on the list. John Buck, Donald Easter, Dalton Bailey, Lydia Bryant, Zhukov Crawford, Joseph Morrill, Set, Sneevatics, Trent Skeen, Robin Chamberlain, Michael Wang, Log, and all of my League 2 members that you see on the right side of the screen there. Thank you all so much for becoming a higher ranked patron, and thank you so much for supporting me and what I do here on this channel. Want to start by going through the live chat here. A bunch of people in the chat asking how I'm doing. I'm doing all right. I would be doing a lot better if the Brewers were winning, but they're not, obviously. So we're down 2 in the series. They played tonight against the Dodgers. We'll see what happens. Forever Always HK says, new background is awesome. Thank you. Yeah, this is most of my books here. There's more over behind the chat in that direction. And I do have a fish tank over on that side that still doesn't have fish. Last night, it did pass the test. Everything is up to kind of the standard things that you test for in an aquarium. There's a lot of things, especially when it comes to saltwater. So I've been spending the last couple months putting it together, and hopefully very, very soon we will actually have some fish in there. So I might move my background back to that wall as well. But yeah, this is the library. This is the studio that I record in at the moment. Lord Beta is asking the question, how do you feel about adding information about Hestia having demigod children? I am going to spoil something. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with the book. So The Court of the Dead is the new Percy Jackson series book that came out. It's basically the sequel to The Sun and the Star, Nico Book 2. And this doesn't have anything to do with the plot. It's just something that is brought up and never discussed again. The fact that there is a new camper at Camp Half-Blood who is a child of Hestia. Now, Hestia is a goddess. I'm going to move my microphone up real quick. Sorry. Hestia is a goddess that is supposed to be a Vestal Virgin. The Vestal Virgins is a cult of Roman priestesses named after Vesta or Hestia. Hestia is a virgin goddess, much like Artemis is, where her whole point is that she doesn't get married and doesn't have kids. So the fact that it's brought up is interesting, and it's, I think, more frustrating to me that it's never discussed in the book again. They literally never bring up the fact that Hestia has children again. I've read through the entirety of Court of the Dead, so this is a spoiler for the end of the book necessarily, not plot-wise, but just the fact that that is never brought up again. We never get a resolution to why or how Hestia has children. And so I'm a little frustrated by that, A, that it was brought up, and B, that it was never given an answer. Now, hopefully in the next book, whether it be Percy Jackson Book 8 or Nico Book 3, which is supposed to come out in the next couple years here, we will have an answer to it. But at the moment, we don't, and it's very frustrating and bothersome to me that we did. I'm going to pause real quick. I am going to grab my drink that I left behind the camera, so give me 3 seconds. You can count. I'm going to grab my drink, and I will be right back. Okay, that may have been about 5 seconds, but Flick Street YouTube is asking, have you ever heard of the urban legend of the Honey Island swamp monster in Louisiana? Owen Colfer drew inspiration from it for his standalone novel, High Fire. Have you ever heard of it? No, not specifically. I'm familiar with just kind of vague swamp monster lore in the United States. I know there's a lot in Louisiana, but I don't know of that one specifically. I also don't know Owen Colfer beyond the Artemis Fowl series. I'm going to go to some pre-prepared questions here that you guys have asked on the channel. Mary Rogers is asking, how long until the Court of the Dead is out? I'm assuming you mean on the channel. So right now, we're probably through the first 15 to 20 chapters of the Court of the Dead on the channel. I'd have to double check to see the actual number. We are done with it for paying members over on Patreon, so if you do want to skip ahead, it is finished over there. Otherwise, the full version for everybody will be available on November 2nd. So we're about 2.5 weeks ahead. What I did is I recorded 1 chapter a day for the free audience and 2 chapters a day for the paying audience. And so there is a bit of a buffer zone if you do want to skip ahead. CC Rules is asking, are you planning on finishing the Fablehaven books? Yes. I just started book 3, Rise of the Shadow Plague. Grip of the Shadow Plague, excuse me. So hopefully that comes out sometime in the next few months here. Obviously, you guys know I've been way behind schedule, with the move to the new house, as well as some very, very fun... Actually, maybe I'll spoil it here. So I've kind of been hinting at new progressions in my family, and I do want to announce to you guys, given my wife's permission that she's allowing me to say this to you guys, my wife is expecting another baby. So come April time, we will have another member of the family, which is very exciting news. But of course, if you guys have been in growing families or are parents, you know that preparing for a new kid is very, very hectic and very, very tiresome, especially obviously for her being the one carrying the kid, but then just, me doing my various jobs and being able to keep everyone else occupied as things are going on and safe and happy and healthy and that sort of thing. So yes, we are expecting another kid, and we moved, and the channel got shut down, and my laptop started on fire a few weeks ago. So it's it's been a hectic couple of months. So hopefully my schedule starts to accelerate for you guys, slow down for me, if that makes any sense. Right now, of course, with Court of the Dead done, I'm currently working on finishing Keeper of the Lost Cities, which should be up sometime in the next few weeks here. I still haven't finished Children of Dune, which is the 3rd Dune book. The second half of that should come out in the next month and a half, and then we'll be moving on to Scent, which is book 2 in the Missing series by Margaret Peterson Haddix. People of Sparks, which is the 2nd book in the City of Ember series. Trying to think what else I am missing in terms of series. We are almost done with the Scorch Trials, which is book 2 in the Maze Runner series. After that, of course, we will finish the Divergent series, followed by finishing the Aragon Inheritance Cycle series, followed by then finishing the original Maze Runner trilogy, possibly then moving on to books 4 and 5 of the Maze Runner. I haven't quite decided if I want to go straight into those yet, but that is the very near future of the channel. King Butter says, do you take commissions? It kind of depends. I don't do this as a job necessarily. And I don't necessarily have time to do commissions unless a certain, I don't want to be scummy about it, but if it is taking time out of my day to a significant amount, I will want to charge for it. And my charge rate probably will be higher than you're expecting it to be, simply because I have a family, I have a job outside of YouTube, and if it's taking up a ton of time, I want to get compensated for that in a way that I think is fair. So it's certainly worth talking about, and it would have to be something that I'm willing to read, first and foremost. But you're more than welcome to reach out to me privately over on Discord, or DMing me or emailing me, echowyrm@gmail.com, if that's something you're interested in. Flick Street YouTube says, is it difficult to start up and maintain a Patreon? I don't think it is, but I wanted to get your 2 cents before I start mine up. I would say no. Biggest thing, you use the word maintain. Just checking in on it regularly. I usually check mine once a day, whether it be for DMs or just things going on, if something wasn't uploaded correctly, that sort of thing. So it's basically like having a second YouTube channel would be the best way I can explain it. But I think it's a lot easier to cultivate in a lot of ways. It's a lot easier to keep track of your A, payments, but B, just memberships and that sort of thing. And then I do like their collections ability. YouTube has playlists, of course. Patreon has collections, and collections are different, but in a lot of ways, I think better than what YouTube has with its playlist options. Lord Beta says, I enjoy the new book. It's so good. If I was a demigod, my godly parent would be Hebe for mom, and as a god, my parent would be a Norse wind god. Interesting. I don't know specifically if there's a Norse wind god that you're thinking of, but very cool. Alyssa asks, will you finish the A Song of Ice and Fire books? Hopefully. They are very, very long books. I've already done the first one, A Game of Thrones, which took me about 2.5 years to do. I'm currently working my way through Clash of Kings. I'm through about the first 2 chapters. I do have some other chapters finished, as well as available on Patreon. I'm not reading it in order, so people have asked me the question, why is chapter 1 and 2 out, and then it skips to chapter 8? I'm not reading them in order. Basically, what I'm doing is either reading by character or doing the short chapters first to try to get more out of the way. Apart from those, I'm also working on other books in the series, as well as I'm almost done with Fire and Blood, which is the prequel book that House of the Dragon is based on. I have about 60 pages left in what is otherwise, I think, a 970-page book. So we're almost done with that one. I've been working on that one for about 2 years. I just started A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which is the compilation of all of the Dunk and Egg stories. That is what A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the TV show, will be based off of when it comes out here in January. So yes, I am continuing to work on it. But yeah, it's going to be a long process. It's a very long series. Major Fangirl asks a question about Sea of Monsters. She says, why did you change it so Percy says the R word? The book says deadbeat friend in the text. That's partially true. I didn't change it so Percy says the R word. I do occasionally change text to make jokes. That is not a joke that I would make. The original copy of the book does have Percy refer to Tyson as the R word. Obviously, we're 20 years on from when that book was released, and the use of that word is very, very much not used anymore. So they have since come out with re-edits of that book where they changed the original text to, instead of saying the R word, they call him a deadbeat friend. But yes, the original text does use the R word. Xavier Holder asks, are full versions ever coming back to YouTube? It depends. Right now, none of my channels have the capability to allow me to upload up to 12-hour videos. Right now, my YouTube channels have a cap at, I think, 14 or 15 minutes. So that's why we're doing the chapters. Full versions are available for free over on Patreon and Vimeo, as well as if you are a paying member on Patreon, you can have access to our Google Drive, which has all of the Percy Jackson series, all of the Hunger Games series in an audio format instead of a video format. And that way it's easier to download and you can have those offline. Let's go to a question. Feel free to keep asking questions in the chat if that's something you guys are interested in. Orkar asks, why do you pronounce vaguely the way that you do? It's a regional accent. I come from the very far north of the United States and have a fairly Canadian-inspired accent, whereas most of the country uses the word vague or vague. If you really want to pull the A out, up here we say vag. It's just regional. I do get a lot of comments on that, though. Someone thought that in my recording it sounded like I said Vogue, and it's probably just the way that I pronounced it with Frank's accent, but yeah, that's why. Almond114 asks, could you add Michael Vey and the Land of Stories books to your list? I think they're already there. I have no idea when I'm going to get to them, though. Let's go to a question from Dark Steel Flame, who asks, is Felix Felicis the same as Liquid Luck? Yes. So this is a Harry Potter question. In the 6th book, The Half-Blood Prince, Harry is, as part of a competition in their potions class, tasked with making I think it's the Draft of the Living Death, in order to obtain Felix Felicis, which is otherwise known as Liquid Luck. So, people call it Liquid Luck, but the official name of the potion and the one that is used in the text mostly is Felix Felicis. And they refer to the potion itself as Felix quite a bit, but they are the same thing. Felix Felicis, if my Latin is correct, Felix is happy. So it's basically just happy potion, essentially, is what the name means. Uncle Tatum says, what is the worst book you've ever read? Good question. I usually say The Scarlet Letter. This week I'm going to change it up and say Jude the Obscure. Jude the Obscure bored me to death when I read it in class. Flickstreet Productions says, in Percy Jackson, I noticed that Minos and Tantalus have one thing in common. When they get defeated for good reasons, they believe they're victims instead of the villains. Do you agree? Yeah, I'm trying to remember King Minos, what book he appears in. Obviously, Tantalus is the more recent example, given that we see Tantalus in Court of the Dead. He returns in Court of the Dead. And I don't know that it's limited to them. I think that most characters in the story see themselves as the victim. It's very rare that their opinions change on that. So, for example, Dionysus and Apollo both have an attitude of victimhood. Apollo kind of changes by the end of Trials of Apollo. Dionysus retains feeling like he's been slighted the entirety of the series. Minos appears, Diz says, in Battle of the Labyrinth, and I'm trying to remember the Ghost King. Yeah. Yeah, I would say there's a lot of characters that are like that. We see that a lot with monsters in previous books, where they basically feel like the good guys are always out to get them, and it is their role to be right, and they're never right, but they continue to strive to be right, if that makes any sense. Lord Beta says, how do you feel about the idea of monsters wanting to change and be good? I think it's a pretty heavy-handed metaphor. I don't think it's very well written, but I don't hate it necessarily. I think the way that it was written and the way that it was presented was very much it felt like Rick was running out of ideas, if that makes any sense. Yeah, the metaphor was not subtle, and in a lot of ways, I think it felt like, as I was reading it, it was like, this feels like he knows he's running out of ideas, so he's having to rehash all these monsters. I think it can be done in a tasteful way. I don't think it was done that well in Court of the Dead. But it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting thing to think about. Question from Sasha Newwood, who says, will you be doing the rest of the Lux series anytime? Possibly. Yeah, it's only been requested a couple of times. I read the first one. So Lux is, I always tell people, and this is kind of spoiling it a little bit. Lux is basically Twilight, but instead of werewolves and vampires, it's aliens. So I did the first book. It's called Obsidian. It's available on Patreon at the moment. And the second book is called Onyx. And I've started reading Onyx. I don't know when I'm going to finish it, but I'm working on it. I just have no idea when or if it will come out. I do have a follow-up on something that was brought up, I think, in the last live stream. There was a question about Percy sending an iris message, and can gods receive iris messages? And last live stream, this was before I had read Court of the Dead, based on everything we know in the series, prior to Court of the Dead, it did not appear that you could send iris messages to gods. Now, we do have information that says that, yes, you can indeed send iris messages to gods. Nico does it a couple of times directly to Mr. D in Court of the Dead. So, whatever I said in previous live streams, yes, you can, in fact, send iris messages directly to gods now, as of current canon. Diz says, will the rest of these sort of summer chapters be put back up on YouTube? They should almost all be there. I have an uploading limit daily. Right now, I can't upload more than 10 chapters a day over on Rick Riordan channel. So, yes, eventually they will all be back up. It just all depends on how many chapters I can get up per day. Pearl Money says, do you plan on reading the last book in the Inheritance Cycle series? Yes. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're like a week away from finishing up Scorched Trials, which is book 2 in the Maze Runner series. After Scorched Trials, we're doing Allegiant, which is the final book in the Divergent series. And once we are done with the Divergent series there, the one book left, then we will be doing Inheritance, which itself is the last book in the Inheritance Cycle. Apart from Murtaugh, which is a prequel, or not a prequel, but kind of a spin-off book. So yes, that should be coming in 2 books' time. So maybe about a month out. Lord Beta says, Son of Neptune is my favorite book. How about you? Which is your favorite? Depends if you're asking just Percy Jackson or in general. If you want me to answer in general, I can do that too. But in terms of Percy Jackson, favorite overall is probably House of Hades. I think House of Hades is probably the best written. I think the best book in the ones that are labeled Percy Jackson is Battle of the Labyrinth. And I think the best series that Rick Riordan has ever written is the Kane Chronicles books.
Okay, I found this on the web.
No, I'm not talking. Sorry. I said series, not Siri, and she just kind of responded. So, sorry. Flick Street YouTube says, also with Minos in the Battle of the Labyrinth, his eternal mission to torture Daedalus reminds me a lot of Captain Ahab and the whale in Moby Dick, as Minos doesn't stop chasing him after death. That's a really good allegory. I'd never really considered that. It's also been a really long time since I read Moby Dick, but the archetype is still there, certainly. Very interesting. I think granted, this is the first time we've seen the character, but I think the character that shows up in Court of the Dead, whose name is escaping me, the main judge, yeah, it's never going to come to me unless you guys type it in the chat. Whoever the lead judge is, I think, has kind of an attitude of no quit until it's over. So, yeah, very interesting. Nomi Vela says, can you do the Twilight Saga? Yes, I have finally started Twilight, so you guys are welcome. You guys have been asking for it for 3 years. My wife is the one that finally convinced me to pull the trigger on Twilight. I am currently through 1 chapter. I have no idea when it's going to be up, but I have started it. Gina Ann Wiseman says, can you do Rowley's Journal? This is a Diary of a Wimpy Kid question. I have never read the Rowley Jefferson Journal books. But I am currently working my way through the Diary of Wimpy Kid books. When I get through all of the Diary of Wimpy Kid books, if there is a market's the wrong word. If there is a bunch of people requesting Rowley's Journal a want for it on the channel, then yeah, I'll probably read those ones as well. Let's go to a question from Gabe, who's asking, can you do Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians? I believe that's on the list. It's been requested a few times. I've never read it, but I will certainly check it out. Dangster Paws asks, what is your Patreon? My Patreon is patreon.com/EchoWorm. It should be fairly easy to find. Gabriel Abshalom says, are you going to read City of the Plague God? This is a question that's been asked quite a bit on the channel, often by the same people as well. City of the Plague God is a Rick Riordan universe book that was not written by Rick Riordan. So I've mentioned this a couple times. I'll explain it again. Rick Riordan has his main 3 series. So he's got the Kane Chronicles, Magnus Chase, and the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles, which itself contains the Percy Jackson books, the Nico books, the Trials of Apollo books, and the Heroes of Olympus books. In addition to those, Rick Riordan, because he is kind of the guy when it comes to mythology books, has slapped his name like an Oprah sticker on a bunch of other authors' work to help them sell better, and which also kind of puts them in the same universe. City of the Plague God, I believe, is a Mesopotamian mythology book. I can't remember what the series is called or who the primary character, what his name is, but City of the Plague God is the first in that series, and the question is, are you going to read it? I've said this before, because of the fact that Rick Riordan can slap his name on so many books without writing them, there are more books in that series than there are in any of his other series. I don't know that I can commit to all of them. I committed to a very large catalog of books with his. I don't know that I can do it for all of the other ones. So at the moment, I don't have intention to do so. If it continues to be requested by a bunch of people, then I may reconsider my thoughts on it. But at the moment, there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm trying to get done before we get to that. Pirithous, thank you. Pirithous is the lead judge in Court of the Dead. Lord Beta says, would you go to Camp Jupiter or Camp Half-Blood or Hotel Valhalla or Brooklyn House? I'm more of a Camp Jupiter guy. Me personally, Camp Half-Blood probably is the most appealing. I'm not a huge summer camp fan, but in terms of what all of the things offer, I think I'd feel most comfortable at Camp Half-Blood. That being said, like, Brooklyn House has always had some sort of appeal to me. I like the idea of kind of a library mansion type thing. Yeah, I like the Egyptian feel of it. I'm more into the Greek mythology sort of side of things of Camp Half-Blood, but in terms of just like the vibes of Egyptology, I think if I had to pick one, I'd actually pick Brooklyn House. Flick Street YouTube says, one thing I like about the funny chapter names in Magnus Chase is that he often follows up a funny chapter name with one that's basically a continuation of the previous one. Yeah, the chapter, so it's funny that you mentioned chapter titles because that's one thing I've been trying to do in my own book, Eric Schwabington, which is now out on the channel in a few different chapters. I think there's 4 or 5 chapters that are done now. But one thing I wanted to do with that is stress comedy when it comes to chapter titles. And so I've kind of been taking notes from Percy Jackson and Magnus Chase because they are a lot of fun. And I do like them. I missed them when we were doing Heroes of Olympus. None of the Nico books have chapter titles either. And, you know, the Apollo ones are more of a summary because it's a haiku. So I didn't really enjoy the titles in Apollo either. But it is nice to have back for Magnus Chase. Let's go to a question from Angel, who asks, why are your audiobooks shorter than the ones on Audible? Because they are my recordings. Audible usually has the official or an officially licensed audiobook reading. Typically, audiobook readers, when they're contracted by the author themselves will do it a lot slower. I do things in my natural cadence, which is typically faster than most audiobook readers. That's why mine are typically shorter. Coffee Bean asking a question about my other book, The Radiation Effect. Why are the Garens so mean to Margot? This has been asked a few times by a few different people. The biggest thing that I can say without spoiling is read the chapter that came out today. So the chapter that dropped today is called Riley. It's chapter 3 of the second book. And there's some more hints that something happened. We don't know exactly what, we don't know exactly who, but something happened that makes the Garens distrust and heavily dislike Margot to the point that they take things out on her. It is a major plot point, so I'm not going to spoil it, but there are some theories going around about why they treat Margot negatively and why she feels the way she does about certain people. So feel free to look into that with the new chapter today. Andrea says, what is your timeline for the rest of the Maze Runner series? Yeah, so Scorched Trials, I mentioned, will be finished over on Patreon this week. Scorched Trials will start on the Maze Runner channel starting November 1st, I believe. And then after we do that, we're going to do Allegiant, and then we'll do Inheritance, and then after that, we'll do Death Cure, which is book 3. Once we're done with Death Cure, because those are the main 3 books, and then the other 2 are prequels, I'm not sure when I'm going to get to the prequels, so I can't quite answer all 5, but I will certainly be doing the first 3, and those should be done by the time we reach February, I believe. Alberto says, do you think you're going to continue with a series of unfortunate events? Yes. I've done the first 3. The 4th one is currently in progress over on my wall of books to finish. So yes, I will eventually do all 13. It's a fun series. Puro Money says, are you looking forward to the next Dune film? If so, what part of Dune Messiah are you most excited to see come to life visually? It's really funny that you asked that because it's kind of a dark answer. The scene that stood out to me the most the first time I read Dune Messiah, I like Dune Messiah. It's a lot shorter than any other Dune book, and the plot is a lot faster than any other Dune book. I think that the thing that I'm looking forward to most is the use of nuclear weapons on the city of Arrakeen. So what happens in the books, this is kind of a spoiler, so feel free to skip ahead 20 seconds if you don't want spoilers for Dune Messiah. But when the nukes are used on Arrakeen, Paul's eyes literally melt out of his face. And when I read that, I was reading it and I went, what? And so I'm just very interested to see how they visualize the nuclear blast on screen, probably similar to something like Oppenheimer, but then to see the after effects of that, to see how we're going to see Paul's perspective now that he's blind going out through the rest of the book, if that makes any sense. Flickstreet YouTube says, I like that you used one of the movie posters for the Scorched Trials for the titular book itself. Especially the poster you used is my favorite one. The reason I did that, this is kind of selfish. I don't really care for the original cover art of the Maze Runner series. I really like the posters of the movies better. And I also thought it would help with engagement on the channel. So that's why I did it, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. Brooklyn asks, can you please do the Blood of Hercules? I don't know that I'm going to get to Blood of Hercules. It's been requested a few times. I don't have any real stake in that book. I don't really have any connections to it. I don't know much about it beyond the fact that it's kind of a more romantic version of Percy Jackson to a very, very minimized extent. And I do have a lot of books currently on my queue that I'm trying to get done. So I can't make any promises on Blood of Hercules. Gage Flores says, can you please do more Aragon and Artemis Fowl when you have the chance? Yeah, so I mentioned my schedule for Aragon a few times already in the stream. Artemis Fowl, I'm hoping to have the third one out by Christmas. We'll see. Like I said, with everything going on, my schedule has changed significantly. So I don't know when I'm going to get to the Eternity Code, but hopefully very, very soon. I have started recording it. I just don't know when it's going to get finished. I just have a few more pre-prepared questions. So if you guys want to leave more questions in the chat, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm always happy to stay as long as you guys need me to. Christian Askren says, have you ever read the Eye of Mines series by James Dashner? I have not. I have not read any James Dashner beyond the Maze Runner series. So it's something I can certainly add to my list. Like I have said about every request so far, I have no idea when I'm going to get to that. Working through quite a few other books at the moment, but... Freedom Eiley says, can you do the Jurassic Park books? This has been asked a few times. They're on my list, but same answer goes. I don't know when I will get to things at the moment, especially further down on my list. My list is kind of weighed by how many times things have been requested by people, who they're being requested by. So, for example, like paying members on Patreon versus free members over on YouTube. As well as, do I have a personal stake in things? The reason I started with Percy Jackson and Harry Potter is because I grew up reading Percy Jackson and Harry Potter. And so I enjoy them a lot. I've wanted to read them as audiobooks for a long time. There are other books that's not the case for. It's part of the reason why so far I've said no to reading 39 Clues, Ranger's Apprentice, and Warrior Cats. Is they're all really fairly long series that I have no personal connections to. And so, like, my desire to read them is significantly less than the energy that it would take to finish them. Like, I love the Percy Jackson books. That's why I've committed to read 25 Rick Riordan books, if that makes any sense. Diz says, thoughts on Kate McKinnon casting as Aphrodite? I have a lot of thoughts that maybe I don't want to put on camera. Kate McKinnon is very funny. Kate McKinnon has a very specific style of humor. Kate McKinnon, to a certain extent, is an attractive woman. She is not what I would envision Aphrodite as at all. I thought the casting in the first season, in a lot of ways, was very, very questionable, specifically when it comes to Hades and using Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes. I thought was a really, really questionable choice. Using Kate McKinnon as Aphrodite, I think, is going to be more distracting than it will be successful, if that makes any sense. Flickstreet YouTube says, I have a few mixed feelings on Magnus Chase, in that while I applaud him for trying to be diverse and inclusive with his characters, I don't think they land as well as critics think. Yeah, so Book 2 won a Stonewall Award, which is basically an inclusivity award in writing when it comes to like mainstream books using LGBT characters. Obviously, one of the main characters in Book 2 is non-binary. Or gender fluid is probably the better term to use. Yeah, certainly gender fluid. Sorry, do apologize. Alex is a fine character. It's typically her own. But there was a lot of approach to it that I thought, like you said, was kind of a swing and a miss. Actually, the one character that has kind of bothered me in terms of the way that she's written, because you mentioned inclusivity, and one thing that was very interesting to me is that they put a Muslim character in a Norse mythology book, which is a very cool idea. I thought the way that Rick handles Islam and specifically the way that Rick writes Islamic attitudes toward Norse deities is very poor. To the point that I think in the past, Rick has been critical of common religion. And by adding a Muslim character, I think he was afraid to do the same thing to a Muslim audience. And it came off as very surface level. So for me, the issue when it comes to inclusive characters in the Magnus Chase series comes less from the fact that we have inclusive characters and the way that they're received, and more the fact that, like, I don't think Rick committed as hard as he should have. And I'm not saying he needs to write things heavy-handed, but I think that he was too afraid to piss people off, if that makes any sense. Sarcastic King Dude says, one thing, your Percy Jackson audiobooks playlist, I'm getting ads. One chapter had 5 ads. You shouldn't be. The channel's not monetized, so I'm not really sure why you're getting so many ads. It could be a Wi-Fi issue. That's often a Wi-Fi issue. If you're getting multiple ads, it's because your buffering times are allowing ads to pop in. Lord Beta says, which house are you in? I see myself as Hufflepuff house. I have always considered myself more of a Slytherin. I am a fairly ambitious individual. I think has always been kind of my draw to Slytherin. I don't know. I have always felt like Gryffindor was very boring. Ravenclaw seems a little studious for me. And I'm not saying that I like the cutthroat nature of Slytherin, but I've thought that what I value in myself is probably ambition. And so that's, judging by the Slytherin, or the Sorting Hat song, that's what Slytherin values. We can go for maybe 10 more minutes if you guys want to ask some more questions in the chat. Otherwise, I think we can wrap things up maybe a little early today, if that is okay with you guys. My goal for tonight and tomorrow is to finish my recordings of Scorch Trials, as well as my recordings of the Hammer of Thor, which is the second book in the Magnus Chase series. That way I can move on to focus up on Keeper of the Lost Cities. I've been putting that off for way too long for you guys. Of course, doing Court of the Dead took up a lot of my recording time, and just everything else going on. So, Flick Street YouTube says, I love Kate McKinnon, but I think that they could have searched a little more for Aphrodite. My selection would have been either Kate Upton, Anya Taylor-Joy, Sydney Sweeney, or Charlotte McKinney. Yeah, those are certainly popular choices these days. I think my biggest worry isn't that Kate McKinnon isn't going to be seen as conventionally attractive the way that Aphrodite needs to be. I think that's fine. I think Kate McKinnon's going to be too distracting. I think they're going to crack way too many Kate McKinnon jokes and not enough Aphrodite is a ditzy blonde beauty queen jokes, if that makes any sense. The way that they're going to write the character as Kate McKinnon, let me say this. It's not going to be Kate McKinnon playing Aphrodite. It's going to be Aphrodite rewritten to be Kate McKinnon is the biggest issue. That's what Hermes was in the first season. And I fear that is probably what's going to happen in season 2 here. The biggest thing that I'm curious about with season 2 is there's a new main character that they've added, and I'm curious where they fit in to the overall story. I'm curious what they're going to change about the overall story. I've always said my biggest expectation is that they're going to cut the Confederate scene and possibly change it to a Nazi scene. Simply because a modern audience 20 years on from when the book was written, Confederate symbolism is not something you see often in media at all, especially when it's treated as casually as it is in the original book. So, yeah, I'm very, very curious. Then, of course, we do have a greenlit season 3. I can't remember if they've started filming season 3 already, but we do have casting announcements for season 3. We have castings for the D'Angelo siblings. as well as some other characters in there as well. While we're on the topic of TV shows and things coming out soon, I did mention earlier that we have had leaked pictures from the set of the Harry Potter series coming out on HBO. I can't remember if they have a release date yet, but they have filmed major scenes. They've already filmed John Lithgow as Dumbledore in a couple very public scenes. Something that is not in the books, but hinted at a couple times. I believe it's a relationship scene between him and Nicholas Flamel, which is very interesting to see growing on kind of the lore of the Philosopher's Stone. We did get the 90s London scenes with Hagrid and Harry. For the life of me, I can't remember it's Nick Frost, but I can't remember the Harry actor at the moment. But yes, very curious to see where they go with the Harry Potter series. I'm very excited for it. And then, of course, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is the Game of Thrones spin-off TV show. They are in the process of filming, or they might actually be in post-production for Season 3 of House of the Dragon. Obviously, we've talked about Season 2 immensely since it came out last year. I'm very eager for Season 3. I'm very curious where they go with Season 3 and where it's going to end and what they're going to include that they didn't include in Season 2. Right now, I'm cautiously optimistic. It's a phrase I use quite a bit on this channel. I want it to be good. I think it has the potential to be good. A lot of people said that about Game of Thrones Season 8. And, of course, we're burned with that. So we'll see what happens. I do think Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is going to be a lot of fun. If you've never read the Duncan Egg novels, it's a very different story to Game of Thrones, obviously set in the same world. But I'm very eager for January. If there's a TV show that I'm most excited about, it's very, very close between Harry Potter and Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Diz says, yes, filming started beginning of August. Flickstreet YouTube says, my main mixed feeling about Rick Riordan is he seems to want his books to appeal to everyone to make them more popular and sell well, but it sometimes feels like he has to do it. Yeah, so I've mentioned that before. That's why we didn't get Percy Jackson 8 this year. The reason we didn't get Percy Jackson 8 this year is because from a marketing standpoint, there is more money to be made right now in a gay book audience than there is a standard Percy Jackson audience. So they had the potential to either write a sequel to the Nico books or finish Percy Jackson, which is what most of us were expecting. He did not finish Percy Jackson. Instead, he chose the Nico route, which from a marketing standpoint makes a lot more sense. There's a lot more... The story fits better with what is happening in the world this year right now. And a lot more money to be made in it. And obviously it's selling really, really well. So the choice was right from a monetary perspective. Yeah, and that's also why he writes to be more inclusive. That's something that Marvel has obviously tried and to a significant amount has succeeded at. Black Panther was one of the largest, if not the largest, grossing film directed by a black director when it came out. Shang-Chi did really well with the Asian audience. Even something like Aquaman did fairly well with the Islander audience. So it's something that's very popular right now and has been for the last 10 years. With that being said, I think I'm going to wrap things up. I just wanted to check one more thing in terms of what is coming up on the channel here. So if I can find my spreadsheet, coming up hopefully very, very soon, as of my current schedule, and this is subject to change, Keeper of the Lost Cities will be the next book that is up on the channel. Of course, then we'll also finish Hammer of Thor, which is the second book in the Magnus Chase series. Scent, I mentioned, is the second book in the Missing series by Margaret Peterson Haddix. The first book is called Found. You can find it on Vimeo and Patreon for free. Children of Dune will hopefully come after that. And then I did mention Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, which is one of kind of the side tangential books of the Percy Jackson series. Of course, continuing with Diary of a Wimpy Kid, as you see behind me. House of Cards is another book that I've been trying to finish reading for a very long time. I'm hoping to have that finished soon. People of Sparks, book 2 in the City of Ember series. And then from there, we will see where we go into 2026. It's been almost 3 years since I started this channel. Thank you all so much for being a part of it. Thank you all for supporting me as much as you do, whether it just be watching these videos, enjoying these live streams, or if you are a paying member over on Patreon. Thank you so much for everything you do. I really, really do appreciate it. I couldn't do it without your support. I probably still would do it without your support, but I just enjoy what I do, and I very much enjoy this community. So if you want to continue these conversations, there is a link to the Discord server available in our channel bio. So just click the channel. Up above, you should have a just kind of a biography of the channel, and there should be a Discord link where you can join for free and join us in a whole bunch of conversations about your favorite topics. So otherwise, we'll see you very, very soon.